turned that in. That was that. The next day, I had received an email from her saying, "Hey, we checked out your portfolio. I thought you had some cool stuff on there. We want to schedule you for an interview." And I'm like, ah!
Welcome back to Hired, where I talk to people that actually did it. That's right, get an instructional design job. Today, I am joined by Noah, who I met via LinkedIn, I believe. Was that how we met? Was LinkedIn?
Yeah, I believe so. Actually, I think the first time that we met, we had connected somehow, and you reached out to me with like a voice message
That's right.
about something, I think maybe portfolio or just something that had to do with whatever desperate thing I was talking about at the time. So, and I thought that was incredibly generous of you, by the way. So I appreciate it.
No, you're fine. And if you don't know, on the LinkedIn app, you can record your voice, and I think it's limited to a minute, but sometimes it's just quicker than just like typing out a bunch of stuff that autocorrect messes up on your phone. Anyway, it makes you look like an idiot. So, yeah, no
Yeah.
worries at all. So, anyway, super excited to talk to Noah. Noah has a fantastic story. He used to work at one of my favorite restaurants, which I guess maybe says something about me, but I grew up in the South, so I think everybody kind of likes that kind of cooking if they grew up where
Uh,
I did. So let's talk a little bit, Noah. Just if you could just briefly introduce yourself, maybe tell a little bit about your where you used to work and what you're doing now.
sure. So my name is Noah Mitchell. I am originally from West Virginia, the beautiful mountain state, but I live in Florida now. That's where I got my graduate degree, was from UF. And so up until this point, I have been working for Cracker Barrel as a server. Anyway, yeah, so let's see. Cracker Barrel, I'm still working there. I graduated UF with my master's in December. And so I actually have a master's in linguistics, but I, halfway through my program, sort of like many of us, fell into instructional design by accident. And so the more I learned about it, the more I was like, wow, this actually seems like something that checks a lot of boxes for me creatively, practically. There seemed to be a good deal of opportunity in the field. And I say that, and I know how hard it is to find a job, but still a lot of opportunity in the field. And so I just started going after it. I took advantage of the fact that I was a student at UF and started taking classes in their educational technology department. And so that's sort of where I got my first experience with it. Oh, a complete and utter mess, I think. I'd been on LinkedIn for quite some time, so I knew like what the platform was. But even when I started searching for jobs, I think I just vastly underestimated how much work it would be. And that's just because up to this point, I've worked at Cracker Barrel. I did get an internship for instructional design at Cracker Barrel's home office, and so like all of that seemed to fall into place pretty easily. I was like, oh man, I'm thinking 3 months after I graduate, no problem. Hop on Indeed, hop on LinkedIn, and just search for jobs. That's pretty much how I started out too. I mean, I got in, tried to revamp my resume, tried to revamp my really crappy portfolio at the time, and just started applying for jobs. And I would say, a couple months into it, I was like, wow, this isn't working at all. um, and I was sort of that person that just, you hear these stories on LinkedIn or anywhere else, any other platform, where people are like, I just started like throwing applications like almost at the wall just to see if it would stick. Um, and so when COVID really hit and all of that happened, like everyone else, I started saying, okay, well, what are some other ways that I can upskill myself, anything that I can do to make myself more eligible? So I started doing that. I still actually have access to my UF email address. So I was able to access the Linda courses on LinkedIn Learning. So I started going into those, trying to learn more about storyline and trying to learn more about like storyboarding and just anything like that related to instructional design that I hadn't had much of an opportunity to do in my theory courses, because a lot of the academic courses tend to be theory heavy, even though they try hard to give you some practical activities to do. And so when I got to that point, I think that's when I finally started to understand the value of growing my network on LinkedIn, trying to find like-minded people, whether that be people who are like me, who are searching for jobs in instructional design, or people like you who are already established in the field and, are just awesome instructional design ninjas and somebody that I could learn a lot from. And so I started doing that, growing the network. But I did continue to just, apply to jobs because I was desperate, especially when COVID hit. I wasn't at first, as in most states, I wasn't able to work at Cracker Barrel. So like meanwhile, my bank account's depleting. I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And then let's see here. Where do I go from here? So thank God everything opened back up. I was able to get back into Cracker Barrel and start waiting tables, get money, blah, blah, blah. But after growing that network, I think especially when I started back to Cracker Barrel, I stopped applying to as many jobs. And I've got an Excel spreadsheet that I had set up trying to keep track of like how many answers I got and how many. And it's pretty much like everybody else's. Nobody answers you back. Like, a very small percentage of companies will even like say, hey, you weren't, I'm so sorry. We really liked your portfolio and we think you have a lot to offer to the world. You're just not the right fit for this job. And I'm like, okay, you know what? At least you answered me back. That's cool. I did actually have a few interviews actually. So there was an interview process that I went through with one company who is a remote company. I mean, their entire, I think, paradigm is online. And so that was a bit stressful because I didn't know what I was doing and they wanted peace. When I got to second or third stage of the interview, you know how that goes. I feel like I felt like I was on an episode of what's that new TV show with The Rock where like you're running through all of these obstacles and you're trying to like jump through these hoops. I don't even know. Titans, that's what it is, the Titan games. That's what it felt like, trying to just jump over each one of these interviews and you're like freaking out. You're like, please Jesus, let something happen. And then they come back with, okay, now we want you to build like a mini course based on this, proprietary context or scenario that they set up. We want you to do in Storyline. They were like, we'd prefer you do it in Storyline. If you're not as familiar with that, you can do something else. But I was like, okay, they prefer it in Storyline. Obviously, if I don't do it in Storyline, I'm not going to get anything. Well, up to that point, I really had not used Storyline all that much. So I downloaded the free trial and just sucktastic my way through like this little course that I set up for him. Needless to say, I did not get that job. But the funny thing was I never received an answer back after that. It was just like radio silence.
You
And I'm
took their
like,
breath away. That's what happened.
oh yeah, complete. Let me tell you, I could show you that course and you'd be like, I clearly see why Noah is an instructional designer now, because it was just fire. It was. There were some cool things in it though. I mean, for somebody who was like freaking out and just like getting into the field, I think I did some pretty cool stuff. I even did my own voiceover on it.
Oh,
And it was
that
like,
sweetens the pot. Yeah.
it was awesome. I loved it. But yeah, I didn't get an answer back. And so I kept I tried to be professional and just like wait a couple of weeks. And then I emailed them like, hey, haven't heard anything back. And I said, I just, if you have any feedback for me or anything, that'd be great. Would appreciate it. So then they get back to me and the guy's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I think I thought I'd gotten back to you, or I just forgot. I can't even remember what he said, but he was like, yeah, we went ahead and moved ahead with another candidate. And I'm like, well, I kind of figured that, but who knows in this day and age what happens. And he said, but if you're interested, I can give you feedback on that and anything else that you have. And I'm like, that'd be great. And so I was like, here's an example. By that time, because I realized going through that process how much I sucked at Storyline. I started doing those LinkedIn learning videos and had actually been helping my wife out with some of her work. And so while I was there with her, I over a couple of days kind of got in there and built my first interaction in Storyline. And that actually happens to be an interaction that I guess the Articulate marketing team went through and put up on its own page. So I've like got that on my resume. I'm like, somebody noticed like my first ever thing. So I sent that to this guy. No answer. I haven't heard from him since. Like, I don't even know if he works for the company anymore.
it's evident to me that you had a really positive attitude through this, right? Because I mean, you're laughing. You're like, is he even with the company anymore? But that is so hard to do when you're on the job hunt. So, how did you kind of keep that positive outlook and attitude throughout this whole process? Because I think that's something that a lot of people are struggling with right now.
Yeah. I think part of it's probably just my insufferable personality. I tend to be like this. I get over things pretty quickly. Um, but on the flip side of that, you would probably be able to go through my LinkedIn and find a couple of really like passive aggressive posts. So like I too have sort of hit that rock bottom of desperation and just like not believing in myself. That's something I've had trouble with all my life. In fact, I have very low self-esteem. Don't have a lot of confidence in my abilities, and so it was really hard. I think what really kept me positive first is my family. Any kind of support group you have, even if it's not a family, it might be friends. I think just having that sort of tight that network there, let's call it like a primary network, really really helps. Because I could talk to them and say, I'm just really stressed out. I don't want to be a server for the rest of my life, which is fine if somebody does. It's a great opportunity actually serving is, but just not something I want to keep up. And so that's sort of like the first barrier I think was having them. Second of all, though, I would say my LinkedIn network, just as I started to connect with more people that were working in the field or weren't working in the field, sort of sharing that that desperation and allowing yourself or allowing myself to be vulnerable and like open up to them. I think that also helped keep me positive because you sort of like the negativity is going to come. We're humans. It's just the way that it is. That's how we deal with things sometimes. But being able to sort of pass that and say like, this is what I'm dealing with other people, and I just don't know what to do. I would reach out to people randomly, even just saying, hey, if you have a moment to talk to me about like this, and this, I would really appreciate it. I understand if you can't, no worries.
As you're going through, obviously you got a job as an instructional designer. So tell us about that process.
Yes,
So you found kind of your one. What was the interview process like with that?
yes,
How's it going as a new instructional designer?
yes. So this is probably my favorite part. Obviously, and I mean, I think the intuition there is like people are, well, of course, you got a job, but not just for that. I'm so thankful that everything else didn't work out because the people that I work for now are just incredible and empowering, and they're willing to let me have creative freedom and back me up on those, but they're also willing to give me critical feedback and let me know that, okay, this isn't what we were looking for. And I don't know, it's really like this mutually beneficial symbiotic relationship or something, right? Like, well, I say symbiotic because I'm like attached at the hip to them now. They're really awesome. Um, but believe it or not, so out of hundreds of applications that I sent out, over those 9 months, it could have even been more than hundreds, to be honest. I had that Excel spreadsheet, but I like lost count. I wouldn't always put stuff in there. It was really dismal. Like I said, at some point, I stopped really even applying to jobs and just started working on my network. And then there was this point in time, I guess about 4 months ago now, that somebody added me on LinkedIn. Lindsay Brackett. She just, wanted to connect, and I connected with her, and that was sort of that. Maybe would see some of her content pop up in the feed, but then just serendipity knocked, and I saw one of her posts come up in the feed saying, hey, we are expanding a bit and looking for another designer. And I clicked on it, and, I went to their webpage and looked at the description, and it was for, I think it was eLearning instructional designer was like the actual title that they had in there. And to be honest, like I said before, because I'm a very anxious person, I don't have a lot of confidence. I started to read that description, and I think because she was in my network, it felt more personal. Because with other things I had applied for, I was like, okay, I'm probably not eligible for this, but I'm going to apply anyway. With her or with their company, I was a little more reticent to do that. Just when I saw sort of like the scope of what all they were looking for. And so I was getting ready to exit off, and then I looked at the bottom, and it was like, this little asterisk that said, we're open to new graduates as well. And so I was like, you know what? If they're open to new grads, maybe I should give it a shot. And so I, went on, did their very short application process, by the way. They're a startup company. So, one of the benefits of that is that their HR process still, I think, isn't as like complicated as others are. Turned that in. That was that. The next day I had received an email from her saying, hey, we checked out your portfolio. I thought you had some cool stuff on there. We want to schedule you for an interview. And I'm like, yes, this is what I've been waiting for. But yeah, so after that, and it might have been a little homunculus in my mind that was like, I don't know if it was me, but I was really impressed though with just that turnaround. I mean, how quick that response was for her to be like, hey, we want to interview. So the next day we set up the interview. I interviewed with them, scared out of my mind. Just who I am. And, but and trying to be honest with them. I really tried to be open and honest about like what I thought my capabilities were. So I told them, I'm definitely, better at the development right now than I am with any other aspect of, maybe the canonical ADDIE sort of phase of instructional design that you think of. But I told them I'm open to learning more. And so, interview I thought went pretty well. We really connected, and then they said, well, we have a couple more interviews or a few more interviews, so we'll give you a call back and we will let you know by the end of the week or something if we need to interview you again or whatnot. And so I was like, okay, that's fine. And I was really trying not to pump myself up too much about it, just to sort of soften the blow when what was in my mind the eventual rejection would come. And so I, hung up the phone, and then the next day, probably in the evening, I believe, and I think I just worked a shift at Cracker Barrel. That night, I got a call from them, and I said, hey, how's it going? And they were like, hey, just we wanted to call you and let you know that we were really impressed with the interview, and we talked about it, and we just couldn't choose anybody else. And so we want to offer you a full-time position. And I was just like, tears just like streaming down, maybe not on the surface, but definitely inside. And I was just, I was floored. I was beyond elated. Given that they were a startup, there were some typical like startup constraints with like the whole package that you would imagine. I'm not gonna state them specifically, because for me that it was like, I wait tables. Like I wait tables right now. I'm willing to take it. But we sort of, talked about they were really awesome, by the way, in the way that they asked, like, what would it take to get you away from Cracker Barrel almost completely? And that's what scared me, actually. That was in the interview. That was in the first interview. That's what scared me. And I was like, oh, don't lowball yourself, but like be realistic. And so that's what I did. But like looking back at that now, I can see that they asked that question, not because they were trying to weed anybody out. I don't think they were really genuinely, saying, what would it take to get you out of that situation and work full time for us? So anyway, that's really how it happened. That was 3 days.
Crazy.
Whereas the first one that I talked about previously was like, a month. Well, longer than that, because I waited for an answer.
Now that you are a bona fide, dare I say, instructional designer, what are some things that you've kind of learned as a new ID? Like some things that maybe you didn't expect IDs do, or things that you're like, wow, I really like doing this and I wish more people knew about this as they transitioned.
Yeah, probably a little bit of both, I'd say. Since I'm still relatively new to the whole thing, I'm just like constantly learning, not only things about ID, but about myself. And I think the biggest hurdle this far has just been transitioning to work in this sort of context, which is work from home, thankfully for me. But so just like up until that point, most of the stuff that I had built had been like interactions in storyline. In school, I had written, a book chapter on educational human resource management, stuff like that. So there had been bigger projects I'd done, but up until that point, I hadn't really had the opportunity to build out like an entire course. So that was understandably daunting for me at first, because I'm like, oh man, it just hit the fan, you know what I'm saying? Like this is real, y'all. This is real and it's about to go down. Um, and I won't lie. I struggled at first with that, trying to like get the motivation and the momentum. And a lot of that was rooted in just my own confidence issues and not necessarily knowing my, I hate calling them bosses because they're just like so antithetical to what that, I think that sort of encapsulates. But I was, scared to show them, even like scared to maybe like do something a little bit different, scared that I wasn't going to do the right thing. And oh my gosh, I was a mess, and I still am in some ways, but I'm getting there with that. And over time, I'm reading books, I'm listening to things, whatever I can do to therapize myself, I'm doing. That was probably the hardest part for me, and still is in a lot of ways, just getting used to that transition. And I know other people are going to be able to relate to that because a lot of us have been in school for years. I mean, that's been our full-time job for however long. So, and now on the flip side, I can say that, and I know I mentioned this earlier when I learned about instructional design, I was saying, oh, it checked off all of these boxes. I can be creative. I can write. I can record my voice. I even played my piano and imported it into Storyline as a sound. It's a ringtone on one of the slides. It's like there's all of these creative aspects of it. And I think even though I was anticipating that, I didn't know how good it would feel, if that makes any sense at all. I didn't know how good it would feel just to like actually step back from that first course that I built and say, oh my God, I can do this. I can do this. And so that's actually what I think spawned this recent post that I had on LinkedIn of like, telling people, keep climbing, keep reaching, keep going, just keep making things, because eventually it's going to happen for you, whether that's, looking for the job right now, or if you're having trouble in your current position as an instructional designer or something, keep going. And I think naturally you get better. You learn things, you figure out what you can or can't do. And it's just been awesome. I keep getting off track, and now I see you. Ugh, don't do that to me because I'm the same way.
That was just so beautiful. I mean, it really is bringing me to tears because, here I am. I've been doing this for gosh, 12 years now, and
Mhm.
I'm so biased and I believe it is the best profession in the world for
Yeah.
those reasons you just said. I love
Mhm.
the fact I can be a creative unicorn. I have brought
Yeah.
in some of my own music. I have a thing I built in Camtasia, this branching video that I actually
Yeah.
brought out a trumpet and made a want 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 noise. And so I completely relate to what you said about the piano and everything. And I'm just, oh my
Yes.
gosh, yes. So
Clara,
the,
listen, on one of those slides, I like have this like streak, man. When I started going through this most recent project, I'm like, I gotta find some more sounds. I legit had a slide where you have to go. Well, you don't have to. It's just part of the story. But you go fix a broken toilet. I recorded me flushing my toilet. Like I got an adjustable spanner in my garage and beat it against the garage door to make it sound like they were working on something mechanical. And it seemed so dumb at first. I'm like, oh, this is so stupid. They're not even going to like this. But when I put it in, I was like, first of all, it's amazing what the brain can trick you about. Like, so I think one of the e-learning heroes things that I've been doing that I've been working on for cooking or whatever, I have this little GIF of a fire. By the way, for those who don't know, you can import GIFs as pictures in Storyline and they still work, and it's incredible. But I was like, man, I really want like a fire crackly sound. And so I literally was like, I looked over at my father-in-law, who typically sits right beside me. He's not here right now. I wish he were, but, and I was like, man, I just don't know how I can do that. And then I'm like, I have an idea. Pulled up Adobe Audition, and I was like, and like, didn't even really have to do any kind of edit to it. I put it on that slide, and when you start it, you see that fire going, and it completely, it tricks your mind. And it's so cool to be able to do that. I mean, just to you can take the most outlandish idea and realize it. And that, well, in my case with the fire, I mean, I don't know if anybody's going to learn anything from that, but that's I mean, that's why I'm in this field. I just told Lindsay the other day, like, I am in this field because I've had so much trouble in my life focusing and learning. And I don't know if it's ADHD or whatnot. I've never been diagnosed with anything like that. I think it's probably an anxiety disorder, but who am I? That is like my biggest motivation to be able to take all of that creativity, but to say, okay, now how can we use it to help people? And so this circles back around to what you were saying. It is the most amazing profession for people who are into that type of thing.
Right.
You get to do that. I mean, you get to help people, or you at least get to create things that will eventually help people. And I don't know, that's pretty awesome for me. So
Yeah, totally. All right. Well,
yeah,
again,
and wacky poetic.
you have brought me to tears. You were the first person that's brought me to tears, but it's good. It's good tears. So,
Well, good.
with that, where can people find you, Noah, if they want to connect with you?
So, so I live in. I'm just kidding. I don't want another. What was this person's name again?
Oh no, I can't put that on this video.
I'm just kidding. I want you all to send me boxes of stuff, okay? Like everything. No. So LinkedIn's really about the only place right now that you'll find me. I am 4.5 years sober of Facebook. So when I
Congratulations.
start, when I started grad school, it was just it was too much for me. I mean, anxiety, right? So I spoke with a friend of mine who was in my program, and I said, man, I've got to stop this. And so like we both got rid of Facebook. That once I get to maybe a more comfortable level in the career, just with my own confidence and with my skill level, that's something I'd like to start doing. Well, I mean, a lot of like what you do, just trying to do things that can help people connect, find jobs, and flourish in the field. So
Hey, I've had a lot of help in my career, so I think the best way to continue it is to pay it forwards.
really, really quickly. I should drop this real quick to you. I'd asked them and I told them about this conversation that we were going to have. We're not making it well known. It's not like official on the website or anything. We are looking
Ooh.
for other candidates. Specifically, we're interested in anybody that we think would be a really good fit for the team creatively and whatnot. We're really interested in people who can beautify things, prettify things. Clearly, clearly I know how to do that. I don't. I'm working on my visual skills, but we're looking for someone like that who probably has, a little more experience in like Camtasia, Photoshop, visual design, stuff like that. So anybody watching this, Legacy FM is the company that I work for. You can even like add me on LinkedIn or whatnot. And, if we think you're a good fit, maybe we can get something set up. I wanted to put that out
That's
there before I
awesome.
forgot. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
that's
I
great.
mean, I was excited. That was the first thing I thought. It was like, if we're looking, can I put this on Kara's,
Yeah,
conversation?
no,
Because I
that's
know there are a lot of people out there looking, and if we can at least help even one person.